The State of Crypto is presented by Tron, connecting the world to the power of cryptocurrency.
Reuters reporting that the FDIC wants bids submitted by today for banks interested in buying up the assets of crypto-friendly bank Signature and Silicon Valley Bank. Joining us now with more reaction to Signature Bank's shutdown is former New York Department of Financial Services Superintendent Maria Vullo. NYDFS is the state banking and financial services regulator overseeing all crypto companies. So, Maria, welcome to the show. Let's start off with Good morning. Let's start off with former Congressman Barney Frank. Now, he's made some comments. He was one of Signature Bank's board members, and he thinks Signature's shutdown could be politically motivated against the crypto industry. But the New York regulator later is pushing back, saying that in a new statement sent to CoinDesk, that the bank failed to provide reliable and consistent data, creating a significant crisis of confidence in the bank's leadership. So I wonder how you square those differing comments.
Well, easy to square them because they're the opposite sides of the debate.
Exactly.
So that's, right. But look, I don't believe that the decision to shut down Signature Bank was because it banked crypto clients. I think the decision was based upon whatever the data was with respect to the withdrawals by customers, and Signature may also have suffered the consequences of contagion risk that was going on following the failure of Silicon Valley Bank. And look, I think, the former congressman has his point of view, perhaps trying to deflect from, the other things that were going on. And I thought what was also interesting was that he gave an interview yesterday and he said that the regulator admitted that Signature Bank was not insolvent, but that's actually not the test. They ran out of money, and you can be solvent and run out of money, because for a bank, your assets are loans that are not liquid. So they ran out of money, and I think that's likely the reason that the bank, unfortunately, was taken over.
So a couple of things about this, and good morning, Maria. Good to see you.
Hi, good to see you.
Yeah. So we have, as you said, it was insolvent, but or rather, it had the money, or it was solvent, but it didn't have the money.
Perhaps, right.
Perhaps. Were there any indications when at least when you were at DFS, that were there any ways in which risk management was looked at? Was there any indication that this could be a problem in a rising interest rate environment? That seems to be a common theme going on, that all these guys were caught flat-footed with long durations, and that this was something that they didn't see, but yet were regulators on top of it to say, hey, guys, you have 3-year duration, 4-year durations on bonds that are, losing value every time the Fed raises rates. Cut it back to, as low as you can. Or, was that something that regulators just generally didn't think about or had to think about?
Well, look, regulators always think about risk management, and certainly credit risk is one, and interest rate risk is one aspect of it. And that's clearly what happened with Silicon Valley Bank, and perhaps also with Signature Bank. And it's, I left DFS in January of 2019. And so it was pre-COVID, and the rising interest rate environment did not exist. And also Signature was a much smaller bank when I left. So it grew, more than double since that time. But it also had a more diversified portfolio than, I would say, Silicon Valley. But I do think what the two banks have in common is that their depositors were about 90% uninsured, which creates a risk that in the event of any possible turmoil, even a hint of it, depositors go fleeing. And I think that's what happened. But on the interest rate question, certainly, not only regulators, but the bank, and with Silicon Valley Bank, they had a tremendous portfolio that was unhedged. They actually terminated their hedges, and that is very poor risk management. And apparently the chief risk officer left last April. So there are a number of factors here, but certainly the mismatch, I would say, in the interest rates was a contributing factor, among others.
Maria, I'm wondering about the timing of it all. So Signature was shut down on a Sunday, lumped in with a Fed statement saying that, they're saving Silicon Valley Bank and Signature, by the way. But people are scratching their heads because, why Signature and not, say, First Republic, which was arguably having more problems at the time, whereas Signature was saying that they were solvent and ready to open for withdrawals on Monday?
Right. But again, so look, I don't think certainly none of us knows all the facts. And with banking especially, right, bank examinations and all that data is confidential and the regulators have that. So none of us really knows all of that. But I think the timing here is quite significant because you had Silicon Valley, taken over, late morning, depending upon which, coast you were on, east or west, but, on Friday. And the initial, announcement was not that all depositors were going to be taken care of by the government when Silicon Valley was first put into receivership, and that changed over the weekend. But also over the weekend, there was information where depositors were certainly in process putting in withdrawals. They couldn't actually get them out over the weekend, but it was in process. And I thought it was also interesting that Barney Frank yesterday admitted that their data was sloppy. Now that is a real telling admission, which seems consistent with DFS's position that they weren't getting good data. But certainly the contagion risk of what might happen on Monday morning, I would think, was in the regulators' minds, and certainly in Washington, because of all of the bank data that they had from many different banks across the country, not obviously just in New York or California, where they might have seen, other significant risks of, so if the markets on Monday opened and banks had to then satisfy withdrawals, would there be significant contagion? And I think, we don't all know, but it seems to me they made the right decision to deal with these two banks and send a very strong message to the public that the system is okay and that we're going to take care of depositors. And that latter statement was important so that depositors didn't continue to pull out their money from other banks.
Yeah, Maria,
it may be unfortunate for who's involved, right? Signature or whoever, but it seems to me, these are judgment calls and it's always easy to quarterback. And who knows what would have happened Monday morning had they not done that? Nobody knows for sure. Who was right? We don't know.
On those judgment calls, so the FDIC also is denying this Reuters report, saying that buyers must agree to give up the bank's crypto activities. And so there is this conversation about, whether or not this was singled out because of their crypto activities. Or do you think, and it sounds like this is what you're thinking, no, it was because of the leaders, it was because of the mismanagement, it was a banking problem?
I don't think that they, first of all, you cannot close down a bank because of a policy reason. And I just don't think that, despite what there might be people that certainly think that banking crypto companies is riskier. From a policy perspective, you can't close down a bank because of that. Now, banking certain types of customers could be riskier. And I would say, again, going back to Silicon Valley Bank, they had lots of other tech companies and they had concentration risk way beyond crypto companies. And so, I think it's, because those industries, all those tech companies, the valuations were dropping, their customer, so there was a lot of risk of withdrawals in all those other businesses. And I would say, if you were banking the restaurant industry in 2020 during COVID, you were a risky bank. So, you can't really just close it down because of that, but it might have been because there were withdrawals in certain industries, including perhaps crypto, that or that, in their other, across the bank risks and their risk management could have caused this problem. And again, I think it's the uninsured deposits aspect of these banks that really created the problem.
So yesterday we had Brian Brooks, who was the former acting comptroller of the OCC. He seemed to believe that this was coordinated from the White House, or at least somebody perhaps in Treasury. You think that, but that it was because of crypto. That this, they're calling it Operation Choke Point 2.0. Do you think that that's feasible? That this was done specifically? Again, he thinks that it's that's the reason. You say that they probably didn't, but nonetheless, you think it's possible that they could have done it?
No, I don't think from a policy reason that they said we're going to close down this bank because we want to send a message to the crypto industry. I don't believe that. But to the extent that there were withdrawals or something from cryptocurrency customers that created part of the risk, I don't really, again, don't know who the customers that were withdrawing funds that created the issue. The coordination from the White House, is all part of the triggering of the systemic risk exception, which the Treasury Secretary had to do. And I believe that certainly they wanted to stem the tide of contagion risk in the greater banking industry. Now, I think it's justifiable to ask, why weren't other things done perhaps to save Signature Bank, like what's being done with First Republic? I think those are valid questions to raise. But I don't think, you close down a bank because of a policy reason. You do because its risk management or its financial picture is unsafe and unsound. And it seems to me that at that point in time, a good argument can be made that it was unsafe or unsound because it lacked cash. It ran out of money to pay the withdrawals from the depositors.
All right, Maria. Well, we thank you for your insights this morning. We got to wrap it there. That was Maria Vullo, former superintendent of the New York State Department of Financial Services.